been shared, but I do believe they are using the Section 47 process to target individuals to shut them up,
Mm.
to stop them from making complaints, to stop them from causing any reputational damage to BNBC. I mean, I don't know if you feel that's right, Jonathan. Jonathan too. I don't know
Um,
if you've.
I can only speak on my experience.
Yeah,
I've supported other parents through the process just because I feel it's the right thing to do, and I I think very logically, and I kind of do my own research. And what I will say is, there's a lot of people who've been through a section, and I can't speak about their cases, but I see a lot of worrying signs that actually, when you look at what a Section 47 is and what it's meant to be,
yeah,
I see some reports that I think it's not that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just not that. There's no threshold. There's no evidence. There's nothing. It's just some words on paper, which is sometimes it's like getting a cease and desist letter. There's
Hmm.
no legal basis for a cease and desist letter. It's just some words on paper designed to scare you, and that's how it feels.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh,
scary for me, James and Jonathan, is that when I put in, and obviously algorithms can often skew this, but when I put in what is a Section 47, so you get that letter or you get the thing, right? And the AI overview, which is generated through multiple reasons why it brings certain information together. They actually says a Section 47 inquiry is a legal investigation conducted by a local authority, children's services, often alongside the police. So if
Yeah.
you've got AI responding like that, there's reason why that data is coming in and the reason why it's had. So when you look at that, imagine your standard parent just thinking, right, I've
Yeah.
got a letter,
Yeah.
Section 4, or they threatened me one, and
Yeah.
police
Yeah. Yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
You,
Do you know what's? I'm just, something, I mean, something's just cropped into my mind, and I'm going to let Jonathan come back to it in a second and kind of. But what I find really, really poor practice, and I actually feel it is really bad practice, is a lot of the times when we speak to parents and like ourselves who kind of went through this process ourselves, that when you put a complaint in about a social worker or a member of staff, yeah, particularly a social worker, that social worker then begins the process of a Section 47. So you put a complaint in about a social worker, and it's that very same social worker who then begins the Section 47 process.
well, actually,
Yes.
I can take when we get to it, I can take that a little bit further, and I can speak to you about, without naming names, I can speak to you about a service manager who a stage 3 investigation kind of legitimized my concerns that when you've kind of complained about a full department and everything's been upheld, that service manager
Yeah, yeah,
is then put in charge of the action plan, whilst also at the same time pursuing a complaint against you.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
which is exactly what happened. But I'll come to that a little bit later on.
Well, I think it got to a stage where, through my own frustration, and this is not a reflection of, I'm not speaking about Barnsley Council about this, I'm just talking generally. And that was that I felt it got to a point where I felt as though I were reporting crimes to criminals. And that
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
phrase
yeah,
that just were in my head. It was like going into a checkout and saying to it, like going into a police station. That's what it felt like. And guy on desk were the guy who'd robbed me, or
Yeah.
he'd parked my car outside. He said, "Excuse me, I'd like to report a car that's been stolen." And he was the guy that stole it. And he started to feel that way, and people were trying to tell me that this is okay, and I'm like, no, it's not okay. You can't investigate yourself, and
And
it's
I
just going
think just
from
to take that
sublime to
step
ridiculous.
further, if I could just take that step further, what you're also doing in that process is that person says to you, well, have you got any evidence? And you say, here. And you say, right, give it to me. Get back to you in 4 months.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Let me
yeah,
rip this
yeah, yeah,
apart. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
that's one of the main reasons why I said to parents, and James says it as well. I know he does because he says it to me, and he'll say, "What you've got evidence, right? Okay, well, let's have a look at what you've got because you think it's evidence. You think that you've got the, you think that, much the same as O.J. Simpson. Everybody he's driving a Ford Bronco down the highway wrong way, and then all of a sudden he's putting a glove on that don't fit him, and he's getting away with it. It's like, let's look at evidence, and then let's look at real evidence.
yeah,
And when you're handing that stuff over. the first thing that anybody's going to be doing who's protecting the system is going to be not just going through it with a fine-tooth comb, but
Yeah.
finding a way to deny it.
Yeah.
That's what the
Unless,
design
unless, unless,
do.
unless I'm going to go on the record here, unless, of course, you're the chief monitoring officer, then when you do offer evidence, they just don't want to take it off you at all. They don't want to know about that. But what we'll do is we'll investigate it anyway, but we ain't looking at what
Like
you've got.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and I think obviously we've got a lot down on this, and I think we obviously when we come to talk about the complaints on the next one, what I just want to kind of, if it's all right with you, John, I'm going to end it on this. So you've got your complaint went in. How many points of your complaint went in? How many points?
think it was approximately 72.
72, and how many were upheld ish?
Right. So, a little bit of context around this. They disagreed. They said they'd like to make my complaint more concise.
Right,
So it was brought down to 6 points. I
out of
then
72.
disagreed. Yeah, I
Yeah,
disagreed that there was just 6 points. It didn't anywhere near cover my complaint. So I disagreed with that process. Um, we then backed and forth, and then they added another one on, and it went to 7. I said no, and it got to the point. I said I'm not negotiating my
Not
complaint.
bargaining
My
on.
complaint, yeah,
yeah,
my complaint is the complaint, and I will not accept anything less than all 72 points. Now that's when I had the stroke. That's when the stress had hit me that bad. I had the
right.
stroke,
Okay.
and when I was in hospital, they sent the complaint through, and they sent me the finalised. I don't think it was on purpose. That, if I'm honest, I think there was some coincidence in it. But that was the time that they selected to kind of then say, no, here's a complaint resolution plan, which later it was discovered that it was the wrong thing to do because Barnes' own complaints policy is that you cannot send a complaint resolution plan that the complainant doesn't agree with. And that was part of my complaint that was upheld. So yeah, it was sent through. But the kind of backstop for them, they said, but I've sent your original complaint through as well. So the person who's doing the complaint can read it. But actually, as we all know, and we all find out at some point, if you didn't write it in your complaint resolution plan, they're not allowed to look at it. Do you know what I mean? And
Yes,
that even
yes,
hits you
yes,
at
yes.
stage 3. If you
Yeah,
say a sentence that you didn't do in your initial complaint,
yeah.
it doesn't get accepted, and they're not allowed to look at it. So no, so that's kind of what happened there. It my I wrote a very in depth, it bothered me that much. I was so upset. Two things happened to me. They were dark days. I was devastated about this. I was genuinely devastated. And two things happened. Number one, I decided that was the day I decided to study law. That's when I started studying law because I thought if the world is this bad, it needs people like me to help it. And I can't
Yeah,
just
yeah,
help it.
yeah,
I've got to back myself with the knowledge. And that's exactly what I did. On the back of that, I then wrote a very long complaint. But it wasn't out of order. It wasn't complaining for the sake of complaining. I've made some very valid points. I used case law. I used law. I used lots of research that went into that. The complaint took me 1 month to write. And I pointed out all the problems. And these weren't me just complaining. This was me pointing out the flaws of the whole process.
yeah,
And
yeah.
unfortunately, like I said, they just put it down into 6 points. I think it might have gone to 7, and then got sent off. And then 3 points, I think 2 points were upheld, but they were really negligible. And I think 4 points were turned down.
And for a borough council, local council, that kind of tries to give the impression that it's improving constantly, that it's trying to improve the lives of the residents. Do you not find it odd that when somebody takes that amount of time and effort to compile a report or to compile information like you've done to give to them, why do they not they don't engage with you? You become part of the problem as opposed to becoming part of the solution, what you really should be. You bring in this, they could have paid thousands and thousands of pounds for having an audit done, or somebody coming in and drilling in, or a consultant to come in and drill in and go, I'll tell you what, that's what your problem is. And I can guarantee if they did come in and look at these problems, yeah, they'd be the very if they were looking at these problems properly, they'd be virtually the same as what you've written in your reports or in on all the 20 odd thousand million complaints that have gone through door. I find it really, really odd why the local authority and with people like the service managers, your chief monitoring officers, your heads of council, your heads of service, why they don't get this information? Go out. Actually, let's have a look at it. You know what I mean? Let's make that change.
Yeah, let's make a
Why
change.
does
And
it
to be
not
honest
happen?
with you, I'll be honest with you, there was another part of another complaint which is very related to this, where somebody outside of social services, part of the authority, said, "Wow, we've done that to you," and they've put their hands up and admitted everything, and they sent a
Right.
very deep apology. And they changed a lot of things on the back of that. And they rang me up to update me about the things that changed. And I thought, do you know what? Absolutely,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
applaud
yeah.
that because what I will say is I'm not here to vilify somebody. There's been a lot of good people that we've worked with recently. Do you know what I mean? There has been some good people in this process. They're not all bad that work for the authority. There's some good
Yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah.
and I've worked with them. And sometimes you've got to say thank you. Like you've been great, you've made a difference in the way that you've approached it and the changes that you've made. It means that my voice has been heard and it improves it for everybody else. And I love that. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very, very rare.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'd echo that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but just one last thing then. If we look at if you had the option to to start again with your complaint, would you change anything that you did?
No, no, because a lot of the stage one stuff was turned down. I I pushed it and I was not giving up. A lot of the stage two was upheld. And actually, I'm quite happy to read you some sentences from that stage two that actually set in motion an action plan that we'll talk about this, I'm sure, at another point. It set in motion an action plan which actually should change the lives of people in Barnsley. I
Yeah.
genuinely believe that. And I'll read you one
Is
line.
the outcome
Yeah,
worth
yeah,
the
yeah.
is the
I think,
outcome
yeah, I
worth
think,
the
yeah. I
I'll
think this would
read
be
you
good.
one line.
Yeah, yeah, please, yeah.
So, and I'll read it word for word. I recommend that complaint 4, the process of investigation and assessment, led to a report that is unprofessional, lacks significant context, is contradictory, inaccurate, and misses out key information. It paints Mr. CB and his family in a light that is not correct and may have an impact on them in the future, is upheld for the following reasons. The report is poorly composed, has a number of inaccuracies and contradictions in it. Detail and context is limited. The purpose of the assessment is not clear. There is little analysis. Identified needs do not lead to recommendations or actions. Key issues are not explored and practice standards are not met. I further recommend that BNBC consider and agree what action to take in respect of the issues identified in relation to the assessment documents and other related documents. BNBC ensure assessments are of an acceptable standard and that a robust quality assurance process is in place.
Mm.
There's also something else which I won't go into, but it relates to where they missed out very, very key information and chose not to put it in the assessment. That's one
Was
line.
this, yeah, which assessment was this? Was this a social care assessment or?
This was a section 47.
Right, okay.
So what we've really done in this first part of this podcast is we've set out who you are, which is a decent bloke, a decent bloke, a good bloke, a family man. You moved into Barnsley, you raised your children in Barnsley, and then you became a foster carer with your wife and loved the child that much that you became an adoptive parent. And then you ended up with a belly full of absolute nightmare uh, because you couldn't get the services that you needed initially for your second child that you'd adopted. And on account of that, then once you'd started to push back at the system, you're of the firm opinion, and a complaint and a complaint resolution confirms that you were mistreated on account of the fact that you were willing to question. Would that be is there anything else that could add to that, Jonathan?
No, I think that's pretty correct. And what I would say is that my um, yeah, that's an opinion, but it's an opinion that's now held up
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah,
independent
Yeah.
investigation.
And I'm confident if you were to take that and take legal action again,
yeah, yeah.
effectively sue the council in a private setting, they would settle out of court. There's the report that you just read from, it confirms that mis mis misrepresentation has caused you significant harm.
Yeah.
And your medical records would show that, and your family's health across mental health, physical health, etc., would confirm that. And I think that's the missing link in all this, is that so many people, myself included, can't make that transition from getting a complaint delivered that vilifies you, but then making it into something that a council actually really cares about, which is the column at the end, which is the budget that says we had to pay JCB 50k.